financing side. So before you start the company, in addition to the team you have, which I think has to be a balance of all of those things, try to go out there and find those people who can help you while you're navigating along the way and help you figure out, what are those 5 things that need to be in that plan as you're thinking through where you're going to be. Why is this idea a good idea? But is it the idea that will actually allow me to grow this into a large and successful company? And you can do that either through your mentors or through other people as well.
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, the team is important. I think smarts are important, but I think, as I said earlier, complementary skills. So you don't want 3 people, all of whom think they're marketing wizards. Right. And they're all very smart marketing wizards, but the chances are that's going to fail, versus having somebody that may know the market well, somebody that has a great network, somebody that knows finance, somebody that knows technology. So that's one thing that I think is really important. The other is to never be afraid to be around people that are much smarter than yourself. And to me, that's just a golden rule. I always look to hire people that I can right away say, this person's smarter than I am in a particular area. They absolutely are going to run rings around me in a particular area. So to me, that's really, really important. And then, don't jump out and start the company just because you have a good idea. A company is more than just a good idea. And you've been around Thai long enough to know what it really takes to build a successful company. So there's just so many elements to it, all the way from just blind luck and good timing to having access to markets, having access to technology, having access to financing, the team, all of those things. So good advisors, good mentors, good networking, all of those things.
Thank you. There's one more.
Thank you. My name is Javeria Aleem, and I actually have a nonprofit foundation called the Muslim Media Arts and Culture Foundation. And one of the major projects that I had worked on was to organize the first ever Muslim Film Festival. And I have a 2-part question. Based on my experience in running this organization, the organization itself is entirely volunteer-based. And so my question is, how do you sustain the livelihood of a volunteer when there really is no way of sustaining any or getting funding for the project? And number 2, how do you retain passion after a severe burnout from doing the voluntary work for such a long time? The first question, retaining volunteers. Second question, any of you, and second question is retaining the passion after the burnout.
Yeah. I think keeping volunteers, it's exactly the same. The answer is exactly the same as to the first one, which is the passion has to be there. If the volunteers are really passionate about the cause, they will find the time, they'll build the time into their schedule to pursue that passion. And just as with any career, if there's a burnout in the career where you just don't feel you're making a difference, your enterprise, your organization isn't, heading in the direction that you want it to go, that's when you start to lose the motivation. And and it's hard to continue that activity. It's even more so when you're a volunteer. When you're paid, sometimes you'll continue to do things just because you want the paycheck. But when you're a volunteer, the only thing that keeps you going is that mission, and to feel that mission is so important that it's worth putting up with. All of the difficulties that go along the way. I mean, that's what I do. I work every day with hundreds of volunteers, and I see that. The volunteers that have been with us from day one, 6 years ago, are the ones who really feel they're making a difference. So.
I just want to add a few things. I think good management with volunteers is very important, just like it is in any company. The volunteers, you need to develop roles for them that they can do in bite-sized chunks that they feel they can be effective for by making clear objectives with time frames where they feel they can get accomplishment. That's true in any place that you manage, but it's particularly true when you're managing volunteer organizations because they have limited time. They need to feel they get reinforced, they've accomplished something. So effective management is really important. So building the structures to enable that is one thing I would say. The next thing is people are volunteer. Their passions come in cycles. I know I can do something for 2 or 3 years, and then maybe I'm looking to move on to the next organization. So I think in a volunteer organization, you have to realize that you're going to have a certain attrition rate and have a vehicle for continuing to bring new people into the organization, giving them responsibilities, giving them new responsibilities, promoting them in the same way so they have more opportunity for leadership. So running it any way you would run a company, but really being aware that in a volunteer organization, in some ways it's even more challenging because they're doing it out of choice.
And I think along what she said is recognition. Volunteer recognition is very, very important. People want to know that you or the organization or the community is recognizing their work and their sacrifice if that is the case. So recognition along with, she's absolutely right, the management and then the recognition. Did we get to part 2? I don't know. What was part 2?
What was part 2? Well, burnout, I think Lorraine addressed it.
Let's take one last question. And then there's one over here.
It's wonderful to be here in a women's forum. It's so politically correct. Tala, tell me, isn't it a bit easier for a South Indian or a South Asian woman who's married to a very well-trained husband that's a bread earner to start a new company?
Do you still beat your wife? I mean, that's sort of a leading question.
Actually, you'll be surprised, but when I started my first company, my husband was in a startup. He wasn't earning very much bread at the time. So it actually was not easier. We went through cycles in our careers when I earned more than him and then when he earned more than me. And so, just having the education doesn't necessarily guarantee the income. And in our case, it didn't guarantee the income until we were both successful at what we were both doing. So, but in general, I would say it's a good idea to not have both spouses go off and do 2 separate startups at the same time. That's not recommended, but we did do that.